Admiral Stoneheart stood at the bridge of his mighty warship, his crystalline form catching the light of distant stars. His vessel, the Dreadnought, was the pride of the Dominion fleet. 300 years of unquestioned rule had made him confident, perhaps too confident. "Status report," he commanded, his voice like grinding ice. "All systems normal." "Admiral, we're entering the dead zone now," his first officer reported. The dead zone, that's what they called this empty sector of space. No one had lived here for centuries, not since the mysterious disappearance of the species that once called it home. The massive view screen showed nothing but darkness and distant stars. This was supposed to be a routine patrol, a show of force to remind everyone in this sector who ruled the galaxy. The Dominion didn't maintain their power through kindness. Fear was their weapon, terror their shield. Stoneheart was about to order a course change when one of his sensor officers suddenly straightened in their chair. "Admiral, large object detected at bearing 227. "Show me," Stoneheart ordered, his crystalline fingers tightening on the command rail. The view screen shifted, and there it was, a massive ship easily twice the size of the Dreadnought, drifting silently through space. Its design was unlike anything in their records. No lights showed on its surface, but its hull seemed perfectly preserved, as if time itself had forgotten about it. "Life signs," Stoneheart demanded. "None active, sir, but," the officer paused, adjusting their instruments, "we're detecting thousands of contained organic signatures in some sort of suspended state." Stoneheart felt something he hadn't experienced in years: curiosity. In 3 centuries of Dominion rule, they'd mapped every corner of known space, catalogued every species under their control. But this was new. "Prepare a boarding party," he ordered. "Full combat gear. I want to know what we're dealing with." As his crew rushed to obey, Stoneheart studied the mysterious vessel. Its hull bore markings in an ancient script. One of his research officers worked to translate it. "Sir, we've identified the writing. It's Earth script. This is a human vessel." The bridge fell silent. Humans, every Dominion child learned about them in their education crystals. The species that vanished 3 centuries ago, leaving behind empty colonies and dead worlds. Some said they'd died out. Others believed they'd fled to another galaxy. There were even rumors that the Dominion's ancestors had fought them and won, but Stoneheart knew better. The humans had simply disappeared. "Sir," his science officer called out, "preliminary scans show this vessel contains approximately 50,000 containment pods. They appear to be Cryo storage units, all still functioning." Stoneheart's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. This could be the discovery of the age. If these were truly humans in those pods, the Dominion would finally have specimens to study. They could learn the secrets of the species that had achieved so much before vanishing. "Bring us alongside," he ordered. "Prepare the capture beams. We'll take this vessel back tow." An alert cut through the bridge. The massive ship had begun to power up. "Impossible," the science officer shouted. "We're detecting energy signatures throughout the vessel. Its systems are activating." Stoneheart watched in fascination as lights began to flicker across the ancient hull. A voice echoed through their communication systems, speaking in perfect modern galactic standard. "This is Atlas, guardian eye of the Earth Fleet ship Sanctuary. You have been detected. Stand down and withdraw, or face the consequences." The Admiral laughed. The arrogance of this ancient machine, thinking it could threaten the Dominion. They ruled the galaxy through fear. No ancient AI would stop them from claiming this prize. "Prepare to board," he commanded. "Disable that eye if possible, but don't damage those pods. I want those specimens intact." As his troops moved to execute his orders, Stoneheart failed to notice something crucial. Deep within the Earth vessel, in a pod marked Engineering Chief, a status light had just changed from red to green. The awakening had begun. The Dominion was about to learn why the humans of Earth had been so respected, so feared, before their disappearance. and Stoneheart would soon understand that some sleeping giants should be left undisturbed. 300 years earlier, Earth was dying. Not with a bang, but with a slow, burning fade as their sun began its final transformation. The great cities still stood, but the skies had turned a permanent shade of red. Time was running out. In an underground facility beneath the old Rocky Mountains, Director Tom watched the final preparations of humanity's last hope. The massive chamber housed row after row of cryopods, each containing a carefully chosen volunteer. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, doctors, the best Earth had to offer. Final systems check complete, a young technician reported. All pods are green. Tom nodded, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of nearby monitors. This wasn't how humanity had imagined their journey to the stars would end. They dreamed of grand exploration fleets and peaceful first contact. Instead, they were running from their own dying sun. The facility's AI, Atlas, appeared on the main screen. Its avatar was simple, a blue sphere that pulsed when it spoke. Director, the EFS Sanctuary is ready for launch. All 50,000 pods are secured and operational. And the other ships? Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. The Sanctuary is the only one that passed final testing, Atlas replied. The other 9 vessels, their AI cores became unstable during integration. We don't have time to fix them. Tom closed his eyes. 1 ship instead of 10. 50,000 survivors instead of 500,000. But it was better than nothing. Better than extinction. A loud rumble shook the facility. Above ground, the sun was becoming more unstable by the day. Earth had maybe a month left before it became completely uninhabitable. Begin launch sequence, Tom ordered. He walked to his own pod, the last one still open. Atlas, you know your mission. Yes, Director. Find a suitable world for colonization. Protect the colonists. Maintain their cryo sleep until optimal conditions are met. The AI paused. But sir, with only 1 ship, the chance is off. The chances don't matter anymore, Tom interrupted. We're out of options and out of time. Humanity survives with us, or not at all. As technicians helped him into his pod, Tom thought about everything they were leaving behind. Centuries of history, culture, and achievement. The great libraries had all been digitized and stored in Atlas's memory banks, but it wasn't the same. Sir, Atlas spoke again, final launch checks are complete. But I should warn you, long-term cryo sleep has never been tested beyond 50 years. The effects of centuries of suspension are unknown. Tom managed a small smile as his pod began to close. Then we'll be making history one way or another. Wake us when you find us a home, Atlas. The pod sealed with a soft hiss. As the cryo systems activated, Tom's last thoughts were of Earth, and the hope that somewhere among the stars, humanity would find a new beginning. High above Earth, the EFS Sanctuary broke free from its moorings. The massive ship, nearly 5 miles long, began its journey into deep space. Atlas directed it past Mars, past the asteroid belt, and finally beyond the solar system itself. For 3 centuries, the AI searched. It passed through thousands of star systems, scanning for planets that matched Earth's conditions. It avoided contact with alien civilizations, running silent, always searching. Many worlds came close to matching the criteria, but Atlas was patient. It had been programmed to find not just any world, but the right world. Then the Dominion ships found them. In the present, Atlas processed the situation with lightning speed. The crystalline beings boarding the ship were hostile, their intentions clear. The AI began emergency revival procedures for key personnel, starting with engineering. As the first pod's status changed from red to green, Atlas prepared the ship's ancient but advanced defense systems. The Dominion thought they were claiming an abandoned relic. Instead, they were about to wake a sleeping giant. In his pod, Chief Engineer Jack's eyes began to move beneath their lids. After 300 years of dreams, Humanity was about to return to a very different galaxy than the one they'd left behind. And this time, they weren't running away. Chief Engineer Jack opened his eyes for the first time in 300 years. His pod hissed as it opened, releasing a cloud of cryo vapor. His muscles felt weak, but his mind was sharp. The pod's neural exercises had kept his brain active during the long sleep. "Atlas," he croaked, throat dry. "Status report." The AI's calm voice came through his pod speakers. "Hostile forces are boarding the ship. 47 crystalline beings, heavily armed. They call themselves the Dominion. I've begun waking Captain Ann and Security Head Marcus." Jack pulled himself out of the pod, grabbing the emergency kit stored beneath it. His hands remembered the training as he quickly injected himself with the stimulant that would get his body working again. "Show me their positions," he said, pulling on his work suit. The suit's display lit up, showing a map of the massive ship. Red dots marked the invaders. 2 more pods opened nearby. Captain Ann emerged first, her military training evident in how quickly she got oriented. Security Head Marcus followed, already reaching for the weapons locker hidden in his pod's base. 300 years, Ann said, checking her suit's systems. "Quite a nap. And we wake up to unwanted guests," Marcus added, assembling a pulse rifle with practiced ease. "Atlas, what are we dealing with?" The AI displayed a hologram of their invaders. The crystalline beings stood 7 feet tall, their bodies semi-transparent and gleaming. They wore advanced armor and carried energy weapons. "Their technology is impressive," Atlas reported, "but our systems are still more advanced. 300 years ago, Earth was preparing for war with the sun itself. These beings have never faced anything like us." Captain Ann studied the tactical display. "They're moving in teams of 3, searching systematically. They're disciplined, I'll give them that." She turned to her companions. "Suggestions?" Jack grinned, already accessing the ship's engineering systems through his suit. "The sanctuary has a few tricks they won't expect. Atlas and I can trap them in the cargo sections, mess with their sensors." "Good," Ann nodded. "Marcus, what about weapons?" The security head had finished checking their arsenal. "Our pulse rifles should work fine. Their crystalline structure might actually make them more vulnerable to sonic disruption." A distant boom echoed through the ship. On their displays, they watched as one of the Dominion teams breached another section. "They're heading for the main cryo storage," Atlas warned. 49,997 humans are still sleeping there." "Not happening," Jack said firmly. He connected directly to the ship's power grid through his suit. "Atlas, remember those defense drills we programmed before launch? Time to use them." Throughout the ship, lights began to flicker. Temperature controls went haywire, creating patches of extreme cold and heat. Gravity shifted unpredictably in different sections. The Dominion team suddenly found themselves fighting the ship itself. "Clever," Ann said, watching the confusion spread among the invaders. "But they'll adapt. Marcus, take Jack and secure the auxiliary control room. I'll head to the bridge. We need to show these crystals that humanity isn't just going back to sleep." Marcus handed out sonic grenades, weapons designed to be safe around cryopods but devastating to crystalline structures. "Just like the old training sims," he said with a grim smile. "Atlas," Ann commanded, "start warming up our weapon systems, and send a message to that Dominion ship. Tell them." She paused, a cold smile forming on her face. "Tell them the rules of their galaxy are about to change." The 3 humans moved out, their suits' stealth systems activating. On the tactical display, they watched as another Dominion team lost gravity and floated helplessly in a corridor. Jack's traps were working perfectly. In his crystalline flagship, Admiral Stoneheart was about to learn a hard lesson. The humans hadn't disappeared 300 years ago because they were weak. They had left because they had to. And now that they were back, the galaxy would remember why Earth's children had once been both respected and feared. The awakening had begun, and with it, the end of the Dominion's rule of terror. The first Dominion team never saw what hit them. They were moving down a corridor when the gravity suddenly reversed, sending them crashing into the ceiling. Before they could activate their magnetic boots, a sonic pulse turned the crystalline soldiers into glittering dust. Marcus lowered his rifle. 3 down. In the ship's systems, Jack was everywhere at once. His neural link with Atlas let him control the sanctuary like a master pianist playing a grand instrument. Doors sealed and opened strategically, herding the invaders into prepared kill zones. Life support systems created pockets of extreme conditions, forcing the Dominion troops to rely on their suit systems. Their armor is adapting, Jack reported from the auxiliary control room. They're learning. So are we, Captain Anne replied from her position near the bridge. She watched through security feeds as another Dominion team approached her position. Atlas, show me their weak points. The AI highlighted structural flaws in the crystalline being's armor. Their bodies vibrate at specific frequencies. Each hit from our sonic weapons creates micro cracks that spread. On the Dominion ship, Admiral Stoneheart raged as he watched his elite troops fall one by one. Impossible. They're primitives. They just woke up. His science officer's response was interrupted by a transmission from the human vessel. Captain Anne's voice filled their bridge, calm and cold. This is your final warning. Withdraw or be destroyed. Stoneheart's crystalline form vibrated with fury. Launch the heavy assault units. I want that ship. Back on the sanctuary, Jack detected the new threat. We've got 20 more incoming. Bigger ones. They're carrying some kind of plasma cutters. They're trying to breach the hull, Marcus said, moving to intercept. Not happening on my watch. Captain Anne had reached the bridge. Ancient controls lit up under her touch as she took command. Jack, remember those defense turrets we never got to test before the evacuation? A grin spread across the engineer's face. Oh yes. Atlas, power up the point defense grid. Outside the sanctuary, the heavy assault units pushed through space toward the human ship. Their orders were to cut their way in, no matter the cost. They were the Dominion's elite, feared across the galaxy. They'd never reached the hull. Panels slid open along the sanctuary's surface, revealing rows of defensive turrets. The weapons were 3 centuries old, but they had been designed to fight a war against space itself. Streams of hyper-accelerated particles cut through the void, turning the elite Dominion troops into space debris. By the first crystal, Stoneheart's first officer exclaimed, "Their weapons, they're piercing our best shields like they aren't even there." In the auxiliary control room, Jack allowed himself a moment of pride. Should we show them what else we've got in storage? Not yet, Anne commanded. Marcus, status. The security head was finishing off the last internal team. Ship is almost clear. These crystal soldiers break easily once you know their resonance frequency. Atlas suddenly interrupted. Captain, I'm detecting communications from the Dominion ship. They're calling for reinforcements. Good, Anne said, surprising everyone. The more they call, the more we'll learn to fear us. She activated the ship's external speakers. Admiral Stoneheart, your boarding action has failed. But please, call your friends. It's time the galaxy remembered why humanity was never to be trifled with. On his bridge, Stoneheart received reports of similar ancient human ships being discovered across the sector. More were waking up. The specimens they'd thought would be easy to collect were turning out to be their worst nightmare. Should we retreat? His first officer asked nervously. Stoneheart's pride wouldn't let him. No, the Dominion rules through fear. We will not be afraid of these relics. In the sanctuary's bridge, Captain Anne smiled as she watched more Dominion ships appear on their scanners. Jack, power up the main guns. Marcus, prepare the next surprise. Atlas, begin waking our combat teams. The AI's voice held a note of satisfaction. Already done, Captain. And I should mention, they're eager to make up for 300 years of sleep. The real battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had once been legendary. The space around the sanctuary erupted with light as 5 more Dominion warships emerged from jump points. They surrounded the ancient human vessel, their weapons charged and ready. "Your situation is hopeless," Admiral Stoneheart's voice boomed through the communication channels. "Surrender your ship and your specimens will be treated with care." Captain Anne sat calmly in her command chair, a small smile playing on her lips. "Atlas, show them what a real warship looks like." The AI complied. Across the sanctuary's hull, layers of armor plating shifted and realigned. Hidden weapon ports opened, revealing arrays of technology that had been designed to fight solar flares and cosmic storms. The ship's true form emerged, not just a colony vessel, but a fortress among the stars. "Ma'am," Jack called from engineering, "the combat teams are all awake. 300 soldiers, ready for action." In the deployment bay, rows of human troops donned their battle suits. These weren't simple spacesuits. They were powered armor designed for the worst conditions imaginable. Each soldier had trained to fight in the death zone around a dying sun. The Dominion's forces wouldn't know what hit them. Multiple ships detected dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Atlas reported. But these weren't Dominion vessels. These ships were different, smaller, faster, belonging to other species. "We're receiving transmissions," Marcus announced from his security station. "They're asking to help us." A new voice joined the channel. "Reptilian, but friendly. Human vessel. This is Captain Razor of the Free Traders. We've been waiting centuries for someone to challenge the Dominion. Let us join your fight." More voices followed. Ships from a dozen different species appeared, all of them victims of the Dominion's rule of terror. They had heard the news. The legendary humans had returned, and they were fighting back. Admiral Stoneheart watched in growing horror as his prey turned into a rallying point for rebellion. "All ships, open fire. Destroy that vessel now." The space between the ships lit up with energy beams and plasma bolts, but the sanctuary's shields, designed to withstand solar radiation, didn't even flicker. The human ships' return fire was devastating. Precise particle beams sliced through Dominion shields, cutting their ships into pieces. "Captain," Jack reported excitedly, "I'm getting signals from across the sector. More human ships are waking up. The Dominion found 3 more of our colony vessels." Anne nodded. Their chances had just improved dramatically. "Atlas, send them our tactical data. Show them what we've learned about our crystalline friends." The battle around them intensified. The Free Traders and their allies darted between the larger ships, their small vessels harassing the Dominion fleet with surprising effectiveness. They had been fighting the crystal beings for centuries. They knew the tactics. They just needed the right weapons. Engineering to bridge. Jack's voice was filled with pride. "I'm transmitting shield frequency data to our new allies. Their weapons should be a lot more effective now." He was right. The next volley from the rebel ships punched through Dominion shields, shattering crystal armor and breaking their formations. The tables had well and truly turned. On his flagship's bridge, Admiral Stoneheart watched his carefully maintained web of fear collapse. "How?" he demanded. "How can one ship change everything so quickly?" Captain Anne's response was broadcast on all channels. "Because we never wanted to rule through fear. We're offering something better. Hope." The battle continued, but its outcome was already clear. As news spread across the galaxy, more ships arrived, not to help the Dominion, but to join the humans and their allies. Every species that had suffered under crystalline rule saw their chance for freedom. "Multiple Dominion ships are retreating," Marcus reported with satisfaction. "Should we pursue?" "No," Anne decided. "Let them run. Let them tell others what they saw here." She stood from her command chair, looking at the tactical display showing more human ships awakening across the sector. "The real war is just beginning, and this time, we're not going anywhere." In the depths of space, more Cryo ships were receiving Atlas's signal. More humans were waking up. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy through fear for 3 centuries, but they were about to learn a hard lesson. Fear could control a galaxy, but hope could ignite it. 1 week after the battle at the Sanctuary, the galaxy was on fire with rebellion. Captain Ann stood in the ship's main conference room, surrounded by holograms of leaders from a dozen different species. The room that had once held Earth's last war council now hosted the first meeting of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. The Dominion is falling back to their core worlds, Captain Razor reported, his reptilian scales gleaming in the holographic light. Their grip on the outer systems is breaking. Because they never truly held those worlds, Marcus added from his position by the door. They only held them through fear. Now that fear is gone. More human Cryo ships had awakened, 7 in total. Each carried 50,000 survivors of Earth, and each was a fortress of advanced technology. They had spread across the sector, helping local rebellions and sharing their weapons technology. The Dominion's biggest weakness, Jack explained to the gathered allies, is their pride. They never expected anyone to fight back, so they never prepared for a real war. Atlas displayed a map of known space, showing the rapid spread of the rebellion. Green lights marked liberated systems, while red showed those still under Dominion control. The green was spreading like wildfire. "We've received a transmission from the Dominion High Command," Anne announced to the Council. "They're demanding our immediate surrender, or they'll," she smiled slightly, "destroy every planet in their control." The alien leaders stirred nervously, but Anne raised her hand. "They won't, because their entire empire is built on keeping those worlds productive. Without slaves to rule over, the Dominion is nothing." "What do you suggest?" asked a glowing energy being, the representative of a species that had suffered under Dominion rule for centuries. Anne nodded to Jack, who activated another hologram. "We've analyzed their crystal technology. Every Dominion ship, every weapon, every piece of their infrastructure relies on the same crystalline frequency. And now, thanks to our allies' intelligence, we know where their central control nexus is." The hologram zoomed in on a massive space station orbiting a crystalline world. The Dominion's capital, their seat of power for 300 years. "One strike," Marcus said confidently, "hit their control nexus, and their entire command structure falls apart. Their ships will lose coordination, their weapons will fail, their empire will crumble. But their central systems are heavily guarded," Captain Razor pointed out. "They have hundreds of ships protecting their capital." Anne's smile grew wider. "That's why we're not going to fight through them. We're going to go under them." She nodded to Atlas, who displayed a new image, a massive human vessel, different from the colony ships. "The ES Tunneler," Jack explained proudly. "Earth's experimental phase shift vessel. It can move through solid matter, through energy shields, through anything. We found it in sleep mode near the galactic core, waiting for the right moment." The alien leaders studied the ship with growing excitement. Here was a weapon that could bypass the Dominion's strongest defenses, strike at their heart. "They ruled through fear for 3 centuries, and continued. Now they're learning what real fear feels like. But we're not fighting for revenge. We're fighting for freedom, for all species." The council erupted in cheers and shouts of agreement. Representatives from worlds that had been enemies under Dominion rule now stood together, united by a common cause and the leadership of the newly awakened humans. "The assault begins in 3 days," Marcus announced. "Every rebel ship, every freed world, everyone who wants to see the end of the Dominion's rule, we all strike together." As the council session ended, Anne looked out at the stars through the conference room's window. Somewhere out there, Admiral Stoneheart was gathering his forces for a final stand. He still believed in the power of fear, but he was about to learn what humanity had known for centuries. Fear might control people, but hope could make them invincible. The revolution wasn't just about defeating the Dominion. It was about building something better in its place. The final battle was approaching, and this time, the galaxy would change forever. The crystalline capital of the Dominion glittered like a frozen star, Around it, 1,000 warships formed a barrier that no normal fleet could hope to breach. Admiral Stoneheart stood on his command bridge, watching the sensor readings of approaching rebel forces. "Let them come," he said to his officers. "They'll break against our defenses like waves against crystal." But Stoneheart had forgotten something important. Humans never play by the expected rules. Deep beneath the plane of battle, the EF's tunneler slipped through space like a ghost. Its phase shift drives bent reality around it, making it as insubstantial as a shadow. Captain Ann stood at its helm, with Jack manning the engineering station and Marcus coordinating with the rebel fleet above. "All ships in position," Atlas reported. "The Dominion fleet is completely focused on the frontal assault." Ann nodded. "Begin phase shift. Take us in." The tunneler became transparent, then began to rise directly through the capital's lower levels. Dominion sensors, designed to detect ships in normal space, saw nothing. They passed through solid crystal walls, energy barriers, and security systems as if they didn't exist. Above, the battle began. The rebel fleet, led by Captain Razor and the other human Cryo ships, engaged the Dominion forces. But this wasn't a battle meant to be won through direct combat. It was a distraction. Approaching the control nexus, Jack reported. "Phase shift stable at maximum power." The tunneler emerged into the heart of the Dominion's control center. As they solidified back into normal space, alarms finally began to blare. But it was too late. "All teams, deploy," Marcus ordered. Human soldiers in phase shift armor poured out of the ship, their weapons already firing. The crystalline guards shattered under sonic pulses, their perfect formations breaking into chaos. None of their defenses had been designed to stop an enemy that could walk through walls. Admiral Stoneheart's voice boomed through the station. "Kill them. Kill them all." But his troops were facing humans who had trained to fight in the death zone of a dying sun. The battle was short, brutal, and completely one-sided. Ann led the charge to the central control room, where the Dominion's rulers had gathered. The massive doors, meant to stop any invasion, meant nothing to their phase shift technology. They walked straight through them. Inside, they found the Dominion High Council, 12 crystalline beings larger and more elaborate than any they'd seen before. And in front of them stood Admiral Stoneheart, his form vibrating with rage. "Impossible," he screamed. "We are the Dominion. We rule through fear." "That's your mistake," Ann replied calmly. "Fear only works until something scarier comes along." She raised her sonic rifle. "Surrender." In orbit above, the rebel fleet had the Dominion forces surrounded. The crystalline ships were receiving confused and panicked orders from their leadership, their perfect formation falling into disarray. "Your empire is finished," Ann continued. "But your people don't have to be. Surrender now, and we can build something better together." Stoneheart raised his weapon, but Marcus was faster. A sonic pulse struck the Admiral, and his crystalline form cracked, then shattered. The High Council, seeing their champion fall, finally understood what real power looked like. One by one, they knelt. Across the galaxy, the news spread at light speed. The Dominion had fallen. 3 centuries of rule through fear had ended in a single day. In the aftermath, Ann stood with her companions and their alien allies, watching the sun rise over the crystalline capital. Already, ships from 100 worlds were arriving, not to fight, but to help build a new future. "What now?" Jack asked, studying the reformed High Council as they signed treaties of peace and cooperation. "Now," Ann smiled, "we do what humanity does best. We adapt, we build, we grow. And this time, we do it together with all species." Marcus nodded toward the stars. "There's a whole galaxy out there, filled with wonders we haven't seen yet. And this time, we're not running from anything." Atlas's voice came through their communicators. "Captain, the other human ships are reporting in. All cryopods are now awake. Humanity has fully returned to the galaxy." Ann looked at the diverse group of species working together in the council chamber. former enemies becoming allies, fear being replaced by hope. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy through terror for 3 centuries, but it had taken humans just 3 weeks to show them a better way. A new dawn, she said softly, for everyone. And in the light of a new day, the galaxy looked toward a future where fear no longer ruled the stars.